Hey leaders, if you're struggling to keep your team engaged and productive, you want to know what I'm about to share. Hello, Crystal DeCuna here, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to the Leaders Listen Up podcast. I'm your host, and I look forward to being your friend. Hey, each week we're going to equip you with new tools and creative techniques to help you design epic customer and employee experiences, allowing you to deliver loyalty, retention, and sales that all deliver award-winning service. My friend, my leader, we want you to be the people's champion for your team and for your customers. So are you struggling to keep your team engaged and productive? Because as a leader, you know that motivating your team is essential for success. And in this episode, I'm going to share with you 3 unique tips to engage your team and ultimately increase that productivity. Whether you're struggling with burnout, disengagement, or you simply want to inspire your team to achieve that excellence that we're all looking for, these tips are sure to take your leadership skills to the next level. So if you're ready, leaders, listen up and let's dive in. As a leadership development expert, I've had the privilege now of working across a variety of industries, a variety of size organizations. And if there's one thing I know, it's that the struggle to engage a team and keep things productive is often one of those things that every leader struggles with. It can be exhausting and definitely challenging. And so this episode was actually inspired by 2 of my clients who, are just, every time I connect with them, every time I talk to them, they're incredibly dedicated to creating a culture of success and one that thrives, but they get so connected to their team that they just love their team. I mean, how awesome is that, right? To be a leader who just absolutely appreciates their team, and they appreciate them so much. They put in so much hard work, and these particular leaders have such a willingness to put in that extra effort and to be vulnerable with their team. But what I know is that often they're challenged because when they're challenged when it comes to keeping it consistent. So when they're referencing, this amazing team, and they're always saying, Crystal, I have the best team ever. I have the best people. And you know who you are. If you're listening to this, one of my leaders, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. I have the best team. But when they're having these conversations with me, it's often that they're talking about 1 or 2 specific people. Right? In their mind, they're talking about referencing 1 or 2 specific people, those key team members. But when you think of the team as a whole, it might not be as like the best team ever, right? So there might be those key people that really stand out. The other thing is that, they could be so thrilled about the performance of their team, and then all of a sudden they get disappointment. They get blindsided. Has that ever happened to you as a leader? Let me know, because that's the kind of thing sometimes that happens. We give them our all, we put everything into them, and sometimes we get blindsided. And some of the leaders that I work with, when they get blindsided like that, it can be devastating. Not only do you take it personally, but it can be really devastating. And sometimes I even see leaders looking at it as a failure in their leadership style, which absolutely it could be, but not my leaders, because my leaders are pretty awesome. But sometimes, at first it can present itself like that. Of course, after they've vented and talked to me about, Crystal, like, I do everything for them, and I've done this for them, and I've done that. That happens. We're all leaders. We're all human. And so that happens. And they take that deep breath and they stop being defensive. And then they're like, wait a minute. What did I do wrong? How did I get blind? How did we get here? And let me know, does that ever happen to you? Because we see that happening so often. And if you can relate, tell me, because that's the kind of thing that happens where we give them our all, and then sometimes we get blindsided. Now, it's a 2-way street, right? We have to be able to open up these lines of communication. And so today I wanted to share with you 3 tips that have proven to be highly effective in a wide variety of industries. So really, whether I'm working with an organization that has 5 to 7 people, or whether I'm working with an organization that has 500 people, this foundational principles that I'm going to share with you right now have worked in all cases. So they're really part of strategic conversations I have, because you have to get tactical with some of these tools that I'm telling you. And you have to really understand what action looks like, right? Sometimes we can share these grandiose ideas with people, and, to be a good business leader, you need to do this, this, and this. But what I want to share with you today, but also in all of our episodes to come, is tactical things that you can do right now, like actionable things that you can do to be able to increase those leadership skills, right? And so number one tip I'm going to share with you is develop a growth mindset culture. Not just you as a leader, but a culture to have that growth mindset. So first we got to define what a growth mindset really is, right? And so a growth mindset culture is a culture that fosters continuous learning and development. So it's never a question of, I've been doing this for 20 years, I've been doing this for 30 years. It is a culture where no matter how long you've been with the organization or how long you've been doing something, you're open and willing to grow and develop, right? And so it encourages your team members to take risks, try new things, learn from their mistakes. Celebrate those small wins and use failures as learning opportunities. So it brings me to failures because, when we're looking at having a growth mindset, failure is one of those things that's an absolute necessity, because we want to be able to learn from our failures, right? And we've heard it before. And so I talk about failure as being, we want to fail fast, we want to fail forward, and we want to fail famously, right? So hey, we made a mistake. Let's get over it. Let's move on. Let's forward for what's next with that next step. And then fail famously is talk about it as a team. Like, hey, this is what happened. And this is this is what we learned from it. Because the reality is, my friends, life happens for us, not to us. And now this is in your personal life as well as your professional life, right? Life is constantly happening for us and not to us. And so we want to be able to analyze that failure. What was that for? What were we supposed to take out of that? Right? What were we supposed to bring back and bring out of it? So one of the tools I've used with my some of my leadership teams is called a Lili meeting. Lili, 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 whatever you want to call it. But it's a Lili meeting. And a Lili meeting is a love it or lose it meeting. Sometimes people call it failure meetings. I'm not a big fan of using the word failure meetings, but love it or lose it meeting, meaning we tried something. We tried something and we loved it, or we are losing it, or we lost it, or it's something that, wasn't going to work or needs tweaking. And so, when you're looking at creating a growth mindset culture in your organization, having these conversations, a Lili meeting might be you could do it once a month. Some of my tech companies do it once a month. Some of my smaller organizations, they'll do it maybe once a quarter and maybe do a 2 or 3 hour meeting, and encourage the team, to make sure that they're presenting something in a Lili meeting, that they're bringing an idea forward that they've had from one meeting to the next. They've had time to try it, test it, see if it works, see if it doesn't, right? That allows you to practice what a growth mindset really is. And again, if you've got a team of 7 people or 700 people, that practicing of the growth mindset starts to be infectious in your culture. That's what we're really looking for, right? And so when you fail over and over again, it's literally the definition of insanity. And so we want to be able to make sure that you're failing, but you're learning from those failures, right? You're not just failing and making the same mistakes. You're failing and you're failing forward, you're failing fast, and you're failing famously. You're talking about it. And so when your team members feel that they're growing and they're developing and that they're supported by you, they're more likely to take ownership of their work. They're more likely to practice innovation and ultimately be more productive. So that's tip number 1, my friends, is, hey, it's a human need to know that our effort is making a difference and that we need to feel significant in our organizations. So to be able to practice that growth mindset, identify what practicing it might look like in your organization. Maybe it's having a Lili meeting. Maybe it's having fail forward conversations. Just take a look at your organization, depending on the size, and how are you going to specifically action having that growth mindset culture. Another thing when it comes to practicing growth mindset sometimes is using your core values, your vision and your mission. We talked about it in the last episode, using those core values to practice some of these things, right? To practice that growth mindset. I also like to have it up, depending on the size of your organization. I like to have growth mindset tips and quotes and techniques and tools posted everywhere in your office environment. Sometimes in emails that I'll send, I'll do it at the end of my signature, like a growth mindset quote, just to inspire and create a little bit of that energy. Sometimes in a Zoom meeting, I'll have a quote on the screen before we even get started, a growth mindset quote or a positive quote, something to just inspire the 1 hour meeting or the conversation that we're having. So there's a few tips for you. All right, tip number 2, you ready? Tip number 2 is to be able to build trust through vulnerability. Hey, leaders, if you're listening, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I think a lot of our leadership programming comes from the leaders who've led us, right? The leaders who've led us. And because of the programming of the leaders who have led us, which could be a decade ago, 2 decades ago, 10 decades ago, we're going to take some of their strengths, but we're also sometimes going to take some of their weaknesses. And I have had the privilege of having the most amazing leaders over the last few decades to really inspire me and motivate me. But some of the leaders that have been in my circle, they have some practices. They have some practices that I can't adopt in today's work world. So, there used to be a time where it was like, no, you have to get into work. No matter what's happening, you have to get there. I mean, I drove through snowstorms and ice storms to make sure I went into work. And it was in some days not a great culture, right? Because it wasn't opening to understanding somebody's safety and the environment that they're, the type of anxiety that sometimes situations can create. So when we're learning from our leaders of the past, they might not have been so vulnerable, right? They were taught to be a very, I don't want to say dictator because I didn't have very many dictator type leaders. Some of you may have, but very strong in their leadership approach, very, a very low level of empathy, maybe even a low level of sympathy, very structured, very strong. Do you know what I'm talking about? Maybe you've had those leaders before, but a bit of I'll say old school mentality, a mentality from a few decades ago that's not going to work in today's business environment. And if you're practicing that mindset or that type of leadership, you're probably facing some struggles. And so, building trust through vulnerability. As a leader, you need to create that safe environment where your team members feel comfortable sharing their thoughts, their ideas, their concerns. Hey, if their kid's sick, they need to feel okay to tell you, hey, boss, my kid's sick. And because that's their world. That's everything to them in that moment. It doesn't matter about the work that they have to produce for you. It matters because their child might be sick, right? And so we have to be able to create an environment where our team feels comfortable and confident. Because if they do, they'll come at you and say, hey, boss, my kid's sick. I need a few hours to make things happen, and then I'll hop online later on. Or if that's okay, can I? They understand the importance of work because they enjoy their work. But if they don't enjoy that work, they're not going to be vulnerable with you, and they'll just call in sick. And it starts to create that negative culture, right? Where people don't share their personal things. So to be a leader in today's business world, practicing vulnerability is really, really important. And so one way is to be able to build trust by being vulnerable yourself, right? As a leader, be vulnerable yourself. Share your own experiences, your own struggles, your own failures, because we've all done it. And it really helps your team members to see that, hey, you're a real person and not just a boss. I have one leader that I work with that she struggles with social media. So she's like, Crystal, some of my team members want to be my friend on social, and I put out there on my social, if I'm going out to dinner and if I'm going, here and there. And this is a fine line. It depends on how close you want to be with your team. Me, I am the same person on or off the camera. And so I'm the same person with or without my team. I'm the same person with or without my family, I feel like I'm the same person. And so it doesn't bother me if they see me, going here, going there, doing this, doing that. That's my authentic self, right? And so if you are a leader that's comfortable sharing your authentic self, share it and connect with them on social media. Chances are, if you let them connect with you, you'll be able to connect with them, which will allow you to get to know them better. It'll allow you to get to know their parents' names, their significant others' names, maybe their kids' names, that their kid plays hockey, or that, they really have their own hobbies of painting or pottery or whatever it might be. You being vulnerable allows them to be vulnerable. And when they're vulnerable and you're vulnerable, you allow yourselves to have a really strong relationship. That relationship cultivates a culture of success within your team. And so it's really hard for leaders to be vulnerable. Showing vulnerability can look very scary. Like, Crystal, all of a sudden you're asking me not to be the boss. No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is take that deep breath, practice those core values, allow yourself to be vulnerable. We're not looking to share all your dirty laundry. We're looking to be able to make sure that they get to know you on a comfortable level so that everybody is comfortable sharing your personal life and your professional life. I know some people say don't mix them. I don't know how you can't, because what happens to you personally affects you professionally. What happens to you professionally affects you personally. There's boundaries, of course, but the way you show up to things is because of the experiences that you have. So practicing this can look a little bit different for every leader. So again, I'm not suggesting airing your dirty laundry, but things like just knowing what's happening in their family. Hey, didn't you say that your parents are celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary? What did you get for them? I saw that. And then maybe a couple days later, you might have seen a gift that you might suggest for them to get. Or, you can have these conversations that allow you to be more than just the boss or the leader. It allows you to be human and allows you to show them that, I really care, because you're practicing those core values and they will do the same in turn. So number 2, build trust through vulnerability. Be vulnerable, be a vulnerable leader, my friend, and it will transform the way you feel when you're operating with your team. All right, tip number 3, focus on employee well-being. There's been so much great talk about this. Actually, I'm doing a podcast and webinar tomorrow. Tomorrow we're talking about diversity and well-being and all the things that are needed to create these employee experiences and really allowing employees to feel heard and welcomed and included. And so focusing on employee well-being allows your team to feel physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually healthy, because they're engaged with you and they enjoy their work environment. Ultimately, they're going to be more productive. So as a leader, we have to be able to prioritize their well-being. Now, there's a few tools I love to use here. So one of the tools that I really love to use is called the science of fascination. It's a super powerful tool. It's a tool I've used for a couple decades now. And when I just practiced it the other day with 200 executive leaders, and they loved it, because what the tool does, the science of fascination, we know about self-care. We know about making sure that you're balancing workouts and eating. And that's all really, really, really critical. So don't stop any of that. But what the science of fascination allows you to do is it allows you to see how you show up at your best self for your team, for your family, for your friends, how you show up at your best self, when you show up for your best self, how other people see you. And so, those times where you feel like you're in quicksand and you just feel like I'm not inspiring, I'm not engaging, it's because you're not staying in your fascination state. And it takes work to stay in your fascination state. And so Science of Fascination talks about how do you stay in that state for a good chunk of time. Most people are in their fascinating state of very few hours of your work week. And so it tells you and allows you to stay in that state where you feel your best. You don't feel like you're in quicksand. You feel inspired and motivated, because that is infectious, and that will allow your team to be able to feel inspired, engaged, motivated. So it's one of my favorite tools. I'll put a link in here if you want some more information on it. But the Science of Fascination, phenomenal tool. I work with organizations across the globe on it, and it really is transformative when it comes to employee well-being, because they're allowed to. It builds their confidence. It builds their candor. It builds their tenacity, builds their innovation level. It allows them to be more, just more confident. It gives them a confidence on a whole nother level. And it also allows them to analyze their dormant advantage. And the dormant advantage is the advantage where they're not going to inspire, engage, motivate. And what we've learned is that so many employees spend a bulk of their time, sometimes upwards of 80% of their time, in their dormant advantage, because they're trying to be something for somebody else, but they're not fascinating anybody. They're not engaging. They're not encouraging or inspiring, and they don't feel good. And so the dormant advantage is a really great one, because you can start to notice the physiological signs. Are you getting the headaches? Are you gaining weight? Are you staying up at night? How is it showing up on your physical being? And so you can start to be really tactful and adjust that environment for you. Anyways, if you want to know more, I'll probably do a whole episode on fascination. Actually, I will probably definitely do one because it's such a powerful tool. But in the meantime, focusing on your employees' well-being through practicing a tool like fascination is great. There's another phenomenal tool that I use that is an employee engagement tool. So it allows you to kind of get your finger on the pulse of where your employees are feeling. So if you have a tool that you're using when it comes to employee engagement surveys, and if you did a survey pre-COVID, please don't use that information. You need a fresh one because there's so many organizations out there that, oh yeah, we did a survey and it's been collecting dust for a couple of years now. Doing those employee surveys really will help you to gauge where people are and, put your finger on the pulse of how people are feeling within your organization. All right. I hope that helped. I hope I gave you some great tools. All right, let's wrap things up. So developing that growth mindset as a team and being vulnerable as a leader and keeping your employees' well-being top of mind are all just a few of the techniques that will absolutely allow you to have that foundation of excellence and, allow your team to feel engaged, inspired, motivated, and ultimately be more productive. That's the goal, right? We want to be a happy environment that's cultivated by success and productive. So my friends, I want you to be able to use these tools. So today you've invested a little bit of time listening to this podcast, watching this video. And so hear me out. I want you to take just one tool that I shared with you today. And I shared quite a few. And I want you to start taking some action. So whether you're using the Lily meetings, the love it or lose it meetings, or maybe you're starting to learn a little bit about one team member at a time, to help you build some vulnerability, or maybe you want to build confidence amongst your team and practice the science of fascination. Whatever it is, you just invested your time into listening to today's episode. So right now, think about that one thing that you're going to action. All right. Hey, leader, you've got this. And I'd be delighted if you'd share your successes and your struggles with us as you practice some of these tools that you've learned today. The Leaders Listen Up podcast is where leaders come to be better leaders by listening, learning, actioning, and sharing. So share your thoughts, my friends. Thank you for spending some time with us.